Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Staminas people. And with that, we will get underway. Are there any changes to the addition this evening, or to the agenda, changes or additions to the agenda this evening?
Your Worship, we have one late item, a late delegation request from the applicants of 201 and 203 Dogwood Drive. And we would suggest they would go under 7.2, which is delegations. And as per Council's procedure bylaw, because it is a late delegation, it requires a 2/3 majority approval by Council, and it must be heard prior to readings of the bylaw.
Thank you. Is there a desire on the behalf of Council to make the motion to allow them to be added to the agenda? Moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Councillor Virtanen. Any discussion? So it's a 2/3 majority vote required to allow them to present their delegation. All those in favor? And opposed? None opposed. It's unanimous. So they will be added under item 7.2. With that change to the agenda, if we can have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to Rise With Report. We do have appointments for the official community plan steering committee to Rise With Report on, and they are that Isabel Anderson has been appointed to represent the youth sector, and Cindy Bolio and Mark Drysdale have been appointed to represent the business sector. With that, we will move on to minutes of the special council meeting held February 16th, 2021. And if there's no errors or omissions, a motion to adopt those minutes. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to item 6.2, page 9, minutes of the regular meeting of council held February 16th, 2021. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Virtanen. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. And moving on finally to minutes, item 6.3 of the council meeting held February 23rd, 2021. If there's no errors or omissions, a motion to adopt those minutes. Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That takes us right down to our delegations, and we'll bring our first delegates in. It's Dr. David Copeland, from the president of the Nanaimo Medical Staff Association, Nanaimo Medical Staff Engagement Society, and this is a request for council's support for Island Health's 5-year plan to turn the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital into a tertiary hospital. And if we can get, there he is. Welcome, David.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
I hope I have a slide deck that's being loaded so I can speak to that. But in the meantime, just to let you know, I'm a radiologist and I've been at NRGH for 26 years. And I'm president of the medical staff, have been for 3 years. And what this presentation, I've given this to 30 different groups, and it's really an information session on what we need going forward for Central and North Island. We need a hospital with many more programs and services north of the Malahat. And that's what we're advocating for. And this kind of outlines what we need in a bit more detail to give you an idea of what we're looking for. We're working with Island Health on this, and they're supporting everything we're doing, the medical staff in Nanaimo. And Carrie, I see, is there. So you got the first slide?
Yeah, I believe.
Is someone able to enable screen sharing for me, please?
Yeah, I just would refer that to staff.
And so would I.
Yes, you should have access to share your screen.
It's not showing as an option. Oh, now it's popped up. There we go. Apologies for that.
Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me all okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, so I'm going to go fairly quickly because I know we're time sensitive here. So what we're talking about is a full service hospital, and I will explain that. It's both for Central and North Island. Next slide. So the bottom line is programs and funding have not matched the medical need and population growth in Central and North Island for the last 15 to 20 years. I think we all realize that, but it's actually been quite striking how it has not matched this. And historical processes, administrative process, and that have not addressed this. We're not laying blame on anyone. We all can take blame. We're focusing on getting what we need for patients in the future. In 2017, Island Health and our board, Island Health Board, recognized this and came up with a plan with local healthcare workers in Nanaimo. There was about 155 people, came up with something called the 5-year priority services plan. And that's what a lot of this will be based on. So we have the backing of the board on this, and it identified the services we really need up island. And NRGH, just to make you aware, is the designated full service tertiary hospital for Central and North Island. Next slide. That's been agreed to by the ministry and Island Health. Now, here's some of the justification, and it's fairly straightforward. It's population and demographics. There's now more people north of the Malahat than there are south. We're about 450,000 north of the Malahat now, and 440 south, based on BC government estimates. We are growing faster. We're older. The complexity of patients is the same. We've studied that. We have the busiest emergency up island at NRGH by far. And we serve many vulnerable populations, including 80% of First Nations who are often remote. So our demands are going to increase, and they're already equal or greater than South Island. Next slide, please. This is the slide from the title slide of the plan. It's a public document. It's 84 pages. If anyone wants it, we can get that to you. I'm just going to talk about some of the main priorities briefly in the plan, and these are the top 4. One was to work on our relationship with Island Health, and we've certainly done that. We have a great relationship with them now. And the other top 3 priorities are look after our really sick people in the hospital that are critically ill, increase internal medicine and subspecialty medicine programs at Nanaimo for Central and North Island, increase mental health services, both adult and pediatric, and increase the cancer services for the growing demand, Central and North Island. Next slide, please. So it's a good plan because it's data-driven with wide input. It addresses the main care gaps on island and what our patients need. And we've been making a lot of progress working with Island Health. Next slide, please. So this is some of the progress we made. I won't go into it. This has been 2 or 3 years in the making. We're finally getting some things. We're getting a new ICU in Nanaimo with 24 critical care beds. We have 12 complex internal medicine care beds that have been approved. So that's 36. We've gone from 8 to 36. We're going to have a full neurology program, gastroenterology, infectious disease have all improved in the last year based on our work with Island Health and the ministry. And the big critical care medical gap remaining is cardiology and a cardiology catheterization lab. That's the big care gap between us and South Island for critically ill people. Patients with heart attacks really have struggled to get the care they need when they need it. And often this results in poorer outcomes. And we definitely have poorer outcomes in Central and North Island and South Island. And this is just the fact. We are the largest population that actually we know of without a cardiac catheterization lab locally. And I don't want to go into the details of what that is. That's when you have a heart attack, it's where they put a tube into your system and open up the arteries to restore the blood flow. Basically, any population of over 150,000 needs that. So we need full cardiac services and a cath lab, not cardiac surgery. But really, without that, there are 2 standards of care, one in South Island and one in Central North on the island. That's just the reality. No one's to blame. It just happened over the years as we grew. Next slide, please. So there are 2 streams in cardiology. I'm not going to talk about them anymore. Non-invasive, where we get a group of cardiologists to run all the clinics, rely on pacemakers and various things. And then the invasive cardiology, the cath lab. For the cath lab, the one thing you have to recognize, we need a new facility to put it in. And so that will be part of our plans I'll talk about very soon. Next slide, please. So just to give you some idea of how underserviced we are in terms of programs and physicians, this is just 2 slides on some numbers. And if you look at the one tertiary big service we have at Nanaimo, same as Victoria, is nephrology, and that's kidney services. And we have 5.5 nephrology doctors, and there's 7 in Victoria. We're actually 6 now, so we're almost equal. Right now, we have no gastroenterologists, 0. There are 3 total up island, but none in Nanaimo. There's 16 in Victoria. We have 2 cardiologists in Nanaimo and up island. There's 26 in Victoria. And you just look at the rest of these. Infectious disease, we have 3 versus 8. Neurology, 3 versus 14. 1 endocrinologist versus 9 in South Island. Remember, our population overall is greater than theirs. Next slide, please. Just to round this out, psychiatry, adult and pediatric, as I mentioned, is a huge focus. We have 14 psychiatrists up island. They have 82 down in South Island. They have 13 pediatric psychiatrists. We have 1. I won't focus on the other programs except 1 cancer. We have no oncologists north of the Malahap. They have 40 in Victoria. You wonder how that could happen, but that's the reality, and we need to change that by getting a cancer center here. Next slide, please. So the big priorities in the plan, and I will focus on a facility, and I'll give you justification for that separate as opposed to programs. We need a new patient tower and a diagnostic treatment center. That's to address the deficiencies in a 1961 building. So that's a pretty old building. That's 60 years old. So, and I'll talk about that more. We need full cardiac services and a cath lab, as I've said to you. Our care is not standard of care for North America, especially for the population and size in Central North Island. And we need to expand cancer care services in the form of a cancer center. We have poor access and long wait lists. And you may have caught in the last election, our premier announced a cancer center in Nanaimo. That has a lot to do with the advocacy we've done with Island Health. And we've certainly met with our local politicians in Nanaimo, our MLAs. And so that's great news. He announced it within 10 years. We're trying to get that timeline moved up. Next slide, please. So why do we need a new facility? Well, this is what we need: a new tower and diagnostic treatment center. And it includes all the things you see listed there: a patient tower, pathology and radiology, et cetera, and a cath lab space. And that isn't me. This has come from Island Health. So that's what they're saying we need in this. Next slide, please. So why do we need it? Well, that 1961 facility is really structurally unsafe, and you cannot deliver care safely or efficiently. And this is from the 2010 Master Site Development Report. And if you read that, it's the first. I'm just going to highlight a few things from this. Grossly inadequate and outdated inpatient care units. These units, as configured in the red, are not acuity adaptable and would not support a major pandemic. Isn't that interesting? Here we are in a major pandemic 10 years later. Next slide, please. So here's the overall physical site plan, actually scoring everything. 1 and 2 are poor and fair. 3 is good, and 4 would be excellent. Nanaimo's all 1 and 2s, mostly 1s, so poor. And then just read the red in the red at the bottom. Nursing tower, 1963, has many significant physical issues, but not limited to non-compliant with seismic code. And then it goes on and lists all kinds of other things. So we desperately need a new tower. We needed it 10 years ago. Next slide, please. So we are not focusing on the past, though. We're trying to move forward with positive solutions, working with Island Health, and they support everything you've seen tonight. And our goal is to achieve standard of care for Central and North Island. And positive changes, some of I've shown you tonight, are on the horizon as a result of our work. You should also know we've attracted 2 new pediatric psychiatrists and 4 new psychiatrists since we've been doing this. So those numbers will go up when they come next year. Next slide, please. Full service hospital, the benefits are many. And I know for Ladysmith, I mean, I don't know where a lot of you would know where you go, but I know a lot of you come to our hospital. And certainly the tertiary hospital for Ladysmith will be in Nanaimo. And patients won't have to travel to Victoria for a lot of these services. They get the proper care at the proper time from the proper people in the right place. We've already had discussions with VIU. If we get all these services outlined in the plan about medical and technical schools at VIU, which would offer jobs for your kids and grandkids in the future, and also also a much greater chance of keeping doctors in the area. And really, we're talking about correcting historical inequities in resources that really do impact our populations up island. Next slide, please. So what do we need and what can you do? Well, we need a new hospital and treatment center at Nanaimo for all of Central and North Island. We need a cancer center. We are overdue for cardiology services. And we need the ministry to commit now to fund and build these. If we get that commitment, hopefully they can start these in 5 years. It'll take that long, but we need that commitment now, or it won't happen for another 10 years. So we have a lot of support, the medical staff, Island Health Board, City of Nanaimo, the regional district, VIU, business community, local politicians, all the MSAs, the medical staffs on the island have voted and on a unanimous motion of support for this, and a lot of the people and groups we've talked to. So what we're asking is, we let you know about this, and we ask Ladysmith Council just to join and support these initiatives in the best manner you choose. And if you get the chance to voice an opinion on it, we hope it will be a positive one, and you will advocate for this. I think is there one more slide? Yes. So certainly, and this is a bit, our families do deserve healthcare already provided to people in South Island and most of the rest of BC, except for perhaps Prince George. It's about fairness, equity, and access, and it's time to deliver this care. It's our turn. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you for the time and the opportunity to present this.
Thank you very much. I'll go to council for questions. I have a few of my own, but I'll go through our council first. Councillor Patterson and then Johnson.
Okay. Thank you. It's a good presentation, and of course, I would believe that everybody wants the best, most efficient and fastest healthcare. With the new Cowichan Hospital that is going to be built sometime soon, was announced at election, how does that relate to what you folks are looking at?
So we presented this plan to Cowichan, and all that. It's different. Cowichan won't get any of these specialty programs. They're getting a new building, and they desperately need it, and we totally support it. But they're not getting cardiology. They're not going to get a cancer center. On and on and on. So we're talking about they need a big community hospital there, but we need specialty programs up island, and Nanaimo's been the designated site. So they work together, and as I say, we've met with the medical staff, the president, and he's seen our plan, and we've discussed it, and they approve of a tertiary hospital north of the Malahat. But it's a different animal. Do you get what I mean?
Well, I would have thought that, yes, what you're looking for would probably be far superior to what would be built in Cowichan.
No, it's not really superior. It's just, it's built for different, there's going to be different programs. They're not going to build a cardiac catheterization lab in Cowichan, but they're going to have, new ORs, new hospital beds, all kinds of new programs, stuff that they need, but they won't be building a cath lab there. So,
as the chair of the regional hospital district for Cowichan, I can give you all that information, Duck. What he's talking about is this is like the Cowichan Hospital is a new acute care center for the region, but what he's talking about, these are all specialty services, right? That are, generally speaking, including my stepdad, who's down in Victoria right now, has to go to Victoria to get those specialty services, like the catheterization, the cancer, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
My question was asked and answered, but I have another question. I'm just curious about when you're making comparisons to the needs, for example, catheterization, it's the time factor. Victoria is only what, an hour and a bit away. When we look at other municipalities in the interior who have populations, they're further away. So it's a great idea to concentrate specializations in specific areas and feed into them, then we get the best resources and equipment for these specialists. But how does the Nanaimo, whether it's being
Yeah, I get your question.
and 25 minutes by helicopter?
Okay, I get your question. You need to be in the cath lab to have that artery opened up in an hour and 20 minutes. If
Yeah.
you don't get it, that's the golden, so that's what you have.
Okay.
If you put a cath lab in Nanaimo, 95% of the population on the island can get to the cath lab in time. Right now, 45% maximum. Everyone else, you just cannot get there. By the time you get to Nanaimo or Cowichan has a chance. They're kind of borderline, but everything north, imagine in Port Hardy, Campbell River, Comox, there's no way you're getting in there with, and we know the data. I just said it's about 40 to 45% can get down there within 2 hours. With a cath lab in Nanaimo, it's 95%. So it's a great question. And that's exactly why we need a cath lab up here. And we have the population to justify it on its own even, but you're right. The time is critical. If you look at the other populations in BC, it's a great question because the one group that can't get to a cath lab is Prince George, but they're only about 220,000 people. So we're 450. So I'm not saying they don't need a cath lab for other reasons, geography and everything, but we have a great justification. And yeah, the time is critical. There are many other reasons I could talk about justifying why we need a cath lab for, if you don't get in that hour and 20, you still really should get in within 48 hours. And many, many people don't get in here up island in 24 to 48 hours even. It's very difficult. It's a huge population. So.
Thank you. You have follow up at all, Rob?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. It sounds fantastic, and I completely understand the need for having something Central Island. I'm just curious about what do you predict will be the difficulty in getting doctors? There always seems to be shortages of doctors everywhere in British Columbia. How difficult will it be to house the hospital with qualified professionals that will be able to do the work?
Yeah, that's good. I get asked that question all the time. Certain specialists will come. Others are more difficult, but it's a matter of getting momentum too. The more and more, you saw that I showed you the slide showing the people we've recruited in those are all in the last year. And we've just recruited 4 more ICU docs. So as momentum builds, people recognize, yes, it's a bigger center, I want to come. If we get a new tower with a cath lab, they will come. We will get the people. But it's going to take that to get the cardiologists we need and some of the other specialists. But I would say 2 years ago, we were struggling, and now the momentum's, people are starting to come here. And we're getting a lot more people. We had 12 people apply for the 4 ICU critical care positions in Nanaimo, which was quite striking, actually. And they were really good candidates. So
good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Virtanen.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. You mentioned on there you were hoping for our support in the best way that we can. Is there any more effective ways? Like, what does that look like?
Well, a motion of support would be great, but I think the main thing is when you talk to politicians or when you get asked by officials who are involved in healthcare or just even the public that you're aware that we need tertiary services up island. We're just far too big and too old and have too many sick people to deliver care effectively without it. And I think it's real important, Ladysmith will access this hospital in a huge way. And I think as stewards for the public, it's important, and support that. So that's really, I can't give any more direct answer than that. I mean, the funding won't come from Ladysmith. You guys are in a different district, so it's fine. But I think we need your support anyhow.
Thank you. And I will say we are paying quite a bit to get our new hospital, so we'll share the burden of cost. Councillor Johnson.
I'm sorry I had to go so fast, but I know it's time. So
no worries. Thank you.
Half an hour, but
thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Just a quick question. So you're saying that Cowichan is going to be dependent upon you as the tertiary source, not Victoria.
Cowichan's right in the middle. I'll tell you, they can go either way. Everyone else up north, everyone else from Ladysmith North really will be all coming to Nanaimo for the tertiary services. Cowichan can go either way, and that's fine. They're in a good location geographically. However, I can tell you that, remember I mentioned the one program, tertiary program we have that's fully implied is nephrology, the kidney doctors. I can tell you that more patients from Cowichan come to Nanaimo than go to Victoria now, because it's a lot easier to access, in and out. It's way faster. It's less hassle. So I suspect a fair number will choose to come to Nanaimo, but lots will choose to go to Victoria too.
Follow up?
Well, yep.
So the way I understand our medical system, we're like a pyramid. Vancouver General, and those are the ultimate with all the best equipment and best doctors. Then we have secondary and now tertiary. Is Victoria secondary or is it tertiary?
Victoria's tertiary. It's got everything Vancouver General has, except it doesn't have transplants. So
Okay.
we will have some tertiary services in Nanaimo.
So-
We'll have, not all. We're not going to have cardiac surgery and neurosurgery and a couple of other things, but we need a lot of those other services up island. And it's not Nanaimo, it's for the whole central North Island.
Yeah.
So is there a secondary? We go from primary to tertiary. Is there any secondary?
Well, Cowichan is kind of a secondary, it's secondary for sure. Yeah. Nanaimo is secondary with some tertiary. Now we got to make many more tertiary programs for the up island.
Yeah, I think you have the order wrong, Rob.
Okay. And that's
Tertiary's
why
a higher designation in the health system.
sorry.
Tertiary's got a higher designation in our health system.
Okay. I thought that Vancouver was one, and then we had primary, then tertiary, and then we went down to our local health
Yeah.
clinic.
Kind of goes the other way, but that doesn't matter. Yeah.
I got you then. Okay. Fair enough. Gotcha.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. And thank you to Dr. Copeland for the presentation. I'm just wondering if, it's similar to Councillor Virtanen's question, if we can formalize our support, but I know the wording and who it's going to is important. So could we, for next council, have a motion, staff can sort of consult on the wording and a motion come back to council to look at endorsing?
Yeah, I generally speaking, procedure-wise, I always hesitate to make a motion based on a delegation without having some time for sort of looking at all the different things. So I think it would be appropriate to make a motion to refer the subject of the delegation to staff to report back to council for a potential motion of support.
I'd make that.
Okay, and I believe that's Councillor Patterson seconding it. Okay, any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. And I think we do actually have a regional hospital district chairs meeting coming up fairly soon with Island Health. So I'll take the opportunity to speak to our counterparts in Nanaimo and North Island and get their feedback as well. So Doctor, thank you very much for your delegation. I always called you Mr., but Doctor, thank you for your delegation and for the information. I think it's really important. And as you know, I spent a lot of time over the last several years in healthcare around the Cowichan Hospital project. So I understand what you're talking about. And whether unfortunately, I've had the real world experience with both of my dads in the last 12 months, where both on the cancer side and on the cardiovascular side, where they both had to continue to commute back and forth to Victoria for care. So I can understand the need that we have a little closer to home for sure, especially further north. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks very much. If you want my slide deck, you're welcome to it, by the way, if you haven't, if you may have.
Our staff can reach out and get some of that information from you. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks very much. Have a great evening.
Have a wonderful evening. And thank your slideshow controller as well on our behalf. Thank you. All right, so I believe we're moving on to item 7.2, which is our late edition. We have, I believe, Mr. Toby Seward is coming forward to present to us this evening.
And Mr. Frank Counsel.
Okay. And we'll bring them in, and once they're here, we'll welcome them more appropriately.
Okay, they are in the meeting now, Mr. Counsel and Mr. Seward.
Okay, thank you. I've got non-video participants turned off, so there's Mr. Seward. Welcome. Hello.
Thank you. I'm
Hear us?
here.
We can hear you. Mr.
And
Counsel?
Frank Counsel, it was going to do a short presentation, so I'm hoping he's just going to come on.
Yeah, he's there. We can see him now.
Very good.
Hello, Mr. Counsel. You're muted. It's a Zoom tradition.
There we go.
There you are.
Hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mayor Stone. I won't bore you with too many facts and figures here because we've been around the bush on this a few times, and the council has had the pleasure of knowing about this property since 2006. You've dealt with this in this council, past councils, neighbors, community. So anyways, in 2019, Mike and I, FMC Holdings, purchased this property with the hopes of developing it into a seniors rental. That was our idea. This was a gamble to start with because this is not many people have the wherewithal to take on a contaminated site because they're risky, to say the least. Anyways, we had the first iteration of a 6-story building, and we had a lot of feedback from the town about the community about the height of the building. And so we came back, reduced it to a terraced building and 5 stories, which reduced it to 25 suites, which was if you see the renderings of the building, it's a very expensive building compared to what we originally envisioned. So the only change I got from the council meeting of October was it's not viable as a rental building at this time. And so we asking for council support to move this forward. And I can tell you that when momentum picks up in a community, a lot of people make investments in the community. And the fact that we're willing to change the landscape on the beginning of the prettiest street in Ladysmith, I would think that this will change the landscape over the next few years in that area and move it along all of First Avenue. So I'm prepared to answer any questions. That's about all I'm going to say right now.
Well, thank you very much. That was succinct. I will turn it over to council for any questions at this time, but remind all of council that we do have deliberations further in this meeting, 2 items from now on the proposal by the proponents. But if you have any questions for them now, this would be an opportunity. Councillor Johnson.
I just want clarification. The original proposal was rental, and you implied to me that it's no longer be rental, it's be strata. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there'll be no rental at all in it?
No rental at all.
Commercial. Sorry, I was speaking.
No rental. Sorry.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for our proponents? Seeing none, hey, it's short and sweet. Thank you very much for your presentation and your delegation. We're going to do a proclamation and then turn right around to discuss your application. We may request that, and I'll put this through to staff, would it be appropriate, I guess we can put them back in the waiting room if council wants to ask them questions during deliberations of the item, we can invite them back in. Okay, I'm seeing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll ask you to hang on in the waiting room again, Mr. Seward and Mr. Counsel. And when we get to the item, if council wishes to bring you back in to answer some further questions, we will do so at that time. So that takes us to, I believe, item 8.1, and this is a proclamation for World, I'm going to say this right, Lymphedema Day, not lymphedemia. And I'll just briefly read it out. Sorry, got so many pages in this agenda. Short on the agenda list and long on the content. Whereas lymphedema is an incurable condition affecting more than 1 million Canadians, including 30 to 40% of all cancer survivors, and disfigurement, disabilities, discomfort, and distress. Whereas many British Columbians are living with lymphedema, an accumulation of lymphatic fluid that causes chronic swelling in the arms, legs, or other areas of the body, affecting men, women, and children, causing severe financial, physical, and psychological impact on the lives of patients. And whereas there is a desperate need to raise the level of knowledge about lymphedema within the medical community for timely diagnosis and management so people no longer go untreated due to lack of knowledge about treatment. And whereas the lack of focus on this condition has resulted in inadequate education and a lack of effective clinical or surgical treatment, plus a drastic shortage of trained medical professionals. And whereas the mandate of BC Lymphedema Association is to bring attention to this distressing disease and to promote healthy and hopeful living with lymphedema through education, awareness, advocacy, and support for all people in British Columbia living with lymphedema and for their families and caregivers. And whereas communities throughout Canada are demonstrating their support for people living with lymphedema by honoring them and those that provide love, encouragement, and commitment to meeting the needs of lymphedema patients, I proclaim Friday, March 6, 2021 as World Lymphedema Day in the town of Ladysmith. Encourage all of our citizens to work together to promote and increase awareness so that health and well-being of those living with lymphedema is improved. And with that, we will move on to the next item in our agenda. Likely the largest item on our agenda this evening, figuratively and literally. This is a zoning and OCP amendment application, 201-203 Dogwood Drive, page 35 in the printed agenda package. The recommendations are as follows: that council proceed with first and second reading of official community plan bylaw 2003 number 1488, amendment bylaw number 64 2021 number 2062. Number 2, consider official community plan bylaw 2003 number 1488, amendment bylaw number 64 2021 number 2062 in conjunction with the town's financial plan and the town's liquid waste management plan pursuant to section 477(3) of the Local Government Act. Number 3, proceed with first and second reading of Town of Ladysmith zoning bylaw 2014 number 1860, amendment bylaw number 34 2021 number 2063. Number 4, direct staff to proceed with scheduling and notification of a public hearing for official community plan bylaw 2003 number 1488, amendment bylaw number 64 2021 number 2062, and Town of Ladysmith zoning bylaw 2014 number 1860, amendment bylaw number 34 2021 number 2063, and require that the property owner, prior to adoption of official community plan bylaw 2003 number 1488, amendment bylaw number 64 2021 number 2062, and Town of Ladysmith zoning bylaw 2014 number 1860, amendment bylaw number 34 2021 number 2063, A, consolidate amended lot 10 DD 21674N, District Lot 56, Oyster District Plan 1684, also known as 201 Dogwood Drive, and amended Lot 11 DD 27179N, District Lot 56, Oyster District Plan 1684 203 Dogwood Drive, and B, either I, install a pedestrian signal at the existing crosswalk at Dogwood Drive and Bayview Avenue, or provide cash in the amount of 125% of the estimated construction cost and undertaking to complete the work within 1 year of final approval. Or 2, or II, provide cash in the amount of 125% of the estimated construction cost to be deposited to the town's amenity reserve fund should the pedestrian signal not be considered viable through consultation with the developer's traffic engineer. So first, I would ask if there's any questions for staff, and then we can go to questions from the proponent if council so desires. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's going to sound silly, but I just want to make sure. Number 5, going down to point B, either install a pedestrian signal at the existing crosswalk at Dogwood Drive and Bayview Avenue, or provide cash in the amount of 125% of the estimated construction cost. That's the construction cost of the light, not of the whole project, right?
I can safely say I believe it's the light, but I'd put that through to staff, even
But
a
it
nod.
doesn't say that, so it could catch somebody off guard like me.
Through
Okay,
the
thank you.
chair.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the construction cost of the light only.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Question to staff. Section 4, direct staff to proceed with scheduling a public hearing. What kind of format do you see that? Because there'll be a lot of people wanting to participate, will it be over a few days in person, or will it be strictly a Zoom meeting that many seniors aren't familiar with?
It'll be, I believe, a Zoom meeting as per our policy that was adopted for COVID-19 and the accommodations we've made to allow live participation. Of course, all of the other means to provide input, including letters to council that will be attached to the proposal, are also welcome to come forward. Follow up?
So what I'm hearing you say, we're going to have letters come into us and emails. There will be some opportunity for public participation, but the vast majority will be Zoom. Is that correct?
Yeah, the public participation, if they wish to do it live, would be required to be via Zoom, because we're not holding in-person meetings, and a public hearing would definitely not meet public health protocols. Okay, anyone else with questions for staff? Okay, I'm seeing none. We'll move on. Does anyone want to bring the proponents back for any further questions of the proponents? Okay. Oh, Councillor Stevens, would you want to bring them back in?
I don't know as I need to bring them back in. I sort of have three sections of things I want to talk about. One is just general opening comments. I have some maybe down in the weeds wording of the bylaw itself, in the context of it being a bylaw and a zone for this project, but future projects too. And then I have some thoughts on, let's call it this, the sticking points on the project. But I think I will just make general comments, then I'll come back to my other sort of two sections. So, I want to say that honestly, this building is not my personal style. So I hope it's a real compliment to say that I think it's a really good looking building. And I really think it's an extremely thoughtful design. The strategies in terms of massing and changes in the facade, I think are really thoughtful. The different uses of materials, and as mentioned in the delegation portion of the agenda, that they've upped the game in terms of the cost of the building. So I really think that speaks to the proponents going away, hearing us in October, and then coming back and really addressing things that we talked about. In the same vein, I know in October we talked about a height study, and I really want to commend them on the work they've done in terms of taking real photos and then digitally placing the building in those photos, and in some cases not, because you can't see it. And I think that's really telling. It's really a picture tells thousands of words and stops arguments about, I'll be able to see it here. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Wait, there's the picture. Sort of case closed. I think that the proponent has largely made the case for remediation being a community amenity contribution. And I know we talked in October about the traffic study. It's still only one day of data, but the Watt engineering does make a good point that it was pre-COVID. I know myself, I was mistaken in saying it was during the pandemic. It was just before the shutdown. So I think those are my opening positive remarks about what we've got in front of us here, and I'll let the others speak and bring up the other points I've got for later.
Thank you. We don't believe we have a motion on the floor. I don't have anyone else on my speakers list. Councillor Patterson.
I would like to move all 5 points plus the A and B.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Sorry.
Just before you go ahead, Your Worship, if we could just consider each one separately, just because they are bylaws, they should be considered individually.
Okay, first time for everything. All right. So I guess we can start with number one, even though we can't do one without the others, I don't think. But go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
I'll move number one.
Okay, do we have a seconder for number one? Okay, Councillor Jacobson. Lots of seconders on that one. Do we need to have a discussion on with that many seconders on number one?
No.
Thank you for that.
62.
And whoever's calculating 62, I think we're okay. Any discussion on number one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Does anyone want to, Councillor Stevens?
Just before we get going, I maybe should bring up the points. They were on that I wanted, the wording points that I wanted to bring up. They're on page 49 and 50 and page 56. I'll pull them up so I get the wording and can place it for people. So on page 49, about 2/3 of the way down in the original bylaw section 1A, there's text that starts about 2/3 of the way down, talks about highly energy efficient buildings. And then it says utilizing alternative energy sources and other features that contribute to reducing the impacts of climate change. Highly and utilizing alternative energy through to the period is removed from the new paragraph, and I'm wondering if we could stick them back in. I'm thinking more in the case of if this R4 zone is used by another proponent in the future.
So considering that we've already, is that one of the ones we just voted on?
I don't
These
think
kind
it-
of changes, Councillor Stevens, would require a referral back to staff. You can't amend bylaws that are being adopted on the fly like that. So I would suggest if council believes there needs to be wording changes in the bylaw, that the entire package be referred back to staff. Unless staff feels they can amend bylaws on the fly, which we've never done in my time.
I was thinking because they're in the existing bylaw, that they were acceptable language in the past, and that they're a small change, a friendly amendment.
So we'll put that through to staff.
Through the chair. I think you could probably add those back in. As you said, they were existing. The density bonus examples, the list is not exhaustive. So adding it back in or not having it in, I think doesn't make that much of a difference. But if you would like to add it back in, I think that could be done.
So I'm again back to my point though, was that if we're amending it, we need to know the exact wording that we would be moving a bylaw forward in. So we need to know exactly where it would be put back in and the exact wording, because council can't vote on a bylaw that is, oh, it'll be put somewhere back in there. I don't believe, but I'll put that through to staff just for clarity.
Yes, we would need to know where to add it back in. I'm not sure how that would look in a resolution. Perhaps maybe Donna could comment on
Yeah,
that.
I was
I'm
more
not sure.
looking from a legislative services point of view, how we amend bylaws on the fly.
Yeah, Your Worship, you would have to rescind, we could rescind first and second reading and then suggest.
It would have to be referred back to staff. And
Yeah, I don't think we could just do it tonight and have it be done correctly.
Yeah. So back to Councillor Stevens.
I do know the exact placing of it, if that helps to make it clean, I think.
So again, I'm not comfortable reading bylaws that are amended during a meeting. I'd like the time to read through them and see how they're amended. We don't amend policy in a meeting and then adopt the policy that meeting. So I would feel less comfortable than with a bylaw. But you're welcome to put forward your points, and then council can decide to rescind the first and second reading that we had just passed, and then refer all of the suggested changes back for a report back to council.
And my mistake for missing the boat maybe on procedurally on this. The placement in my mind would go, they essentially go back in the paragraph right where they were taken out. So in the third last line of section 1B that's replacing, after the word underground parking, you would put highly before energy efficient buildings. And after that comma, after energy efficient buildings, you would put the text from page 49 that says utilizing alternative energy sources and other features that contribute to reducing the impacts of climate change. And I'm simply thinking in the future use of this. So I'm happy to leave it till the next time that this a proponent comes to try and use the R4 zone, or if we could do it now, I'd be happy with that too.
So I'm just going to go back to staff because again, we're creating a new zone and your points are well taken.
Yeah.
It's not discouraging you from
Yeah.
making those points, but I'm not comfortable creating a new zone in the middle of a council meeting at 10 to 8. If we're going to actually amend the definitions of a zone that was put out in a report to the public, I really do believe that's procedurally, in all fairness to everyone, you're creating a new zone within the zoning bylaw that if those changes were to go back to staff, they could come back to the next meeting. But Ms. McCarrick, I saw your hand.
Sure. Thank you, through your worship, through the chair. We could make note of that. We do have a list in development services of housekeeping items. So we could keep that as one if you want to go through with it as it is written tonight. If council decides to agree to that, and then we can add that to the list and bring it back in a fulsome list prior to hopefully anybody coming back to use this zone, or if they do, we can do it then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Okay, just not to muddy the waters more, another point that I was going to bring up is on page 56 under section C point 3, and it's the amenity triggers. Point 3 says buildings to meet or exceed step code 2. It's my understanding that step code 2 becomes mandatory in 2022. So I was wondering if we would consider, and it could be a housekeeping item later, putting step code 3 in, because step code 2 kind of is a carrot that only lasts another 9 months.
Yeah. So I would also agree with the sentiment of looking at this more wholesomely, but again, this would be dramatically changing potentially the proponent's project, because now we're requiring their project to meet step code 3 today. But again, I would put that through to staff for a reflection on that request.
Through the chair, I can answer this one. The applicant is eligible for the density bonus without achieving any of the step codes because the site is a brownfield and because they have underground parking. So a change to increase the step code in that density bonus provision would not necessarily oblige, so to speak, the developer to do that. In terms of the step code implementation, there's only an absolute deadline on the step code implementation of 2032. The goal for the province is to have all buildings in BC reach step code step 4 or 5 as applicable for building type by 2032. There is no longer a phased rollout in terms of the building code. Step code 1 is essentially the BC building code without certain testing done and various things. So it's meant to kind of be a minimum. So there wouldn't necessarily be, at this time, there is not proposed to be a provincial sort of rollout of the step code that would render this particular density bonus less than what the code requires.
So it wouldn't impact this application is what the short version of that is if we made the change in that definition, but it would just be changing the zone, changing the density bonusing as one of the criteria that could qualify you for density bonusing would be that extra step code. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But it wouldn't impact this specific proposal because they're getting their density bonus through the remediation piece.
That is correct.
Thank you. So I'll let you finish the train of thought just so we can get all that stuff on the table before I go to other speakers. And then I might have a suggestion that might get us through this process, but allow us to make to continue the conversation on the bigger pieces in terms of the new zone that's being created.
Council and staff will be happy to know I have no more little points. So.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask through the staff, just in terms of procedure, we have amended bylaws or given direction after public hearing to staff to make minor amendments to a bylaw. Is there an opportunity if council moves forward with the recommendations that are here, and then we get the opportunity to get the public involved from a public hearing standpoint, that we can then, in the interim time between going to public hearing, contemplate somehow the minor changes that Councillor Stevens, just getting the wording into the appropriate places and then being able to adopt third reading as amended? Or is that just too, is that even more messy than doing it now?
I can take this one, Your Worship. It is possible to amend a bylaw prior to a public hearing. Council certainly can make minor amendments that are easy enough for staff to draft. And then as long as that amended bylaw appears in the public hearing package, which it absolutely would, because we would make sure of that, it is possible to suggest a textual change to the amending bylaw. So it could be as simple as saying, amending the zoning amendment bylaw to refer to step code X in section such and such, and that would be sufficient to change the text of the bylaw.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question before I go back to my speakers list. Could we move this forward tonight and refer the changes suggested by councillors? Oh, I guess we don't have a committee of the whole next week, or do we?
Yes, we do.
Would that be an opportunity for council to just have a bigger conversation perhaps about this new zone that we've created and make sure we've been able to look at it separate from this proposal? I put that through to our CAO or other staff.
Go ahead.
Would it, if there was a direction, the direction out of the committee of the whole would then come back to council. So if the intent is to read this as it is tonight for first and second, then if there were changes at the committee of the whole, it would have to come back to another council meeting.
Right.
Before, sorry.
No, it's okay. Finish what you're saying.
I'm just not sure of the timing.
Okay, so my point being is that proponents have been waiting. There's some, we've got an interim time between October and March, and yeah, it's process, that's the way it goes. But I don't want to hold up their statutory process by going and trying to amend a bylaw in a zone on the fly. Also, we're creating a new zone. Council has never had an open discussion about this new zone. So to tie up this proposal by having a broader discussion about what we're recognizing as thoughts around this newly created zone, I think is unfair to the proponent. So I'm just trying to find a way we can have a separate process to allow this to move forward, but properly be able to reflect and discuss as a council a new zone that's being created within our zoning bylaw. So I'm just looking for some help on how to achieve that.
Go ahead, Jake.
I may be able to speak to that. It would likely create procedural challenges for the applicant to discuss this in a committee of the whole meeting because the content, the information that would be created as a result of that discussion would need to be available as part of the public hearing. So the logistics of making sure that's available within the notification time frame for the public hearing would be quite challenging to meet the procedural requirements. It is quite uncommon for a council to take a component of a rezoning application out of the council meeting process and the readings sequence out to committee of the whole, and then sort of a separate tandem process. I should also point out that simply by adopting this zone, no other properties in Ladysmith would be subject to this zone until such time as council passed a formal amendment to make them subject to this zone. So there is not necessarily a risk of someone automatically obtaining this zone. It is very much, at this time, it is a completely site-specific zone until otherwise amended by council.
Until it's applied to a property. So I might suggest that we are able to move forward with this application, and then I would entertain a motion to refer the new zone to a future council meeting so that council can talk about the provisions within the new zone, as it wouldn't apply to another property. There wouldn't be any risk in having that, but it would allow the proponents to move forward and the public process to go forward, and then we can talk about future amendments to the new zone. I'll come back to you, Councillor Stevens, but I've been talking too long, and I did have Councillor Johnson, Patterson, and then I'll come back to you if that's okay. So Councillor Johnson and then Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. You said basically what I was going to say. I would like to see us move forward with the motion as it stands to approve the first, second reading, because we're going to have the public hearing, we're going to have input. We have an opportunity to modify and amend after that public hearing, because hopefully a lot of the points that will be made by the public may be part of our consideration. In addition, I think it's a shame that we delay the process any longer than we have to, because it's costing the proponents money to have this. And if we go around in circles, we're just wasting their money. So that was my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson and then Stevens.
I think we're all going to say the same thing. Basically, the city manager had said that the new or reinserting the verbiage could be done because staff have some other bylaws that I believe they're going to be bringing forward for updates or whatever. So that could be done at that particular time. I would just like to, if we're doing them individually, I'd like to move item number 2.
Way to sneak it in there. Do we have a seconder for number 2? Seconded, or Ms. Smith, sorry.
Yeah, Your Worship, I do apologize. By passing first and second reading, we now cannot hear from the developers. That's my mistake, as per our procedure bylaw.
Sorry, I wasn't anticipating we would hear from the developers. We'd already asked if they wanted them to bring them in, and we passed that point.
Yeah, just in case council had questions. That's all I was pointing out.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, that was moved by Councillor Patterson, and I got a second from Councillor Johnson, I think, at the time. Is there any discussion on number 2? Okay, well, I do have you on my speakers list, Councillor Stevens, or do you want me to call number 2 and then come back to you? Okay. Okay, I'll call the question on number 2. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Councillor Stevens, you're next.
Oh, I just want to say, I started out praising this particular project. I don't want to vary from that. I was thinking we would catch these items on the fly. I'm happy to catch them later as a matter of housekeeping.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patterson.
I'll move item number 3.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Stevens. Any discussion on number 3? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Moving on to number 4, Councillor Patterson.
I'll move number 4.
Thank you. And let's direct staff proceed with the scheduling for the notification of the public hearing and then all the verbiage. And that's seconded by Councillor Vertanen. Anybody want to speak to this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Moving on, who's next? Councillor Stevens.
I guess I'm moving point 4.
I think we're on 5.
Oh, on 5. Okay, good. I wanted to move point 5, point 5A, and and B2.
Okay, so I actually had a question for staff on the B. Was that staff could make that choice? We keep the either in there, or do you want council to choose one of those 2 options? Because sometimes it's like council moves either this or that. In this case, is it one or the other, or do you want us to allow both of those to be in the resolution as options for staff to work on the proponent with?
Through the chair, it would be both. It would essentially give the applicant the choice, so as just to make it easier given scheduling and so on.
Okay. Okay. So sorry, I hate to interrupt your motion, Councillor Stevens, but I'm still not clear because it does seem like an either or, because the second one says Should the pedestrian signal not be considered viable through consultation with the traffic engineer? But point one, oh, there's an or after. Never mind. Thank you. So Councillor Stevens, did you want to move points B, 1, and 2 then? And that allows staff to work with the proponent on the either or option.
Sure, if that's the interpretation of it. My original reasoning for picking B2 was that there seemed to be some ambiguity of whether it was viable, and I had a few thoughts around the discussion in October. This is an active transportation corridor. CPAC noted that they'd like to see the grass sections on the landscaping plan maybe addressed again with hardscape. So I thought there was, for staff, some details to look at. Is it viable? Do we want to get rid of the grass as opposed as per CPAC's recommendations? Is that an overall cost savings for the proponent because they don't have to cut it, water it, and maintain it for perpetuity? So I was going for B to sort of leave it as wide open as possible. But I'm happy if the interpretation is or, and it's a big or, then 1 and 2 is fine.
Oh, thank you. So you were moving item 5, A, B, and B1 and 2.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Patterson, is that a second? I'm giving it to Councillor Mackay. You're too wishy-washy. Is there any discussion on number 5? Councillor Johnson.
I'm going to be voting against the motion as it stands because I don't believe that we need a pedestrian crosswalk light there. And if we do, we're going to start a trend where we will, at our expense, be having to look at putting more and more of these in other places, such as First Avenue and High Street and various other spots, because the argument is that this is a traffic corridor. That volume of traffic is going to be the same all along the corridor, basically. So I see us opening the door to unnecessary expenditures. If we have a problem, then we can look at putting a signalized light there, but until then, no. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Patterson and then I'll put myself on the list.
Okay. Actually, again, putting public safety, it has been proven that these signalized crosswalk indicators actually make drivers more aware, and also pedestrians, because they have to stop and push the button. So I think it's a great idea, and it's something that we should have done, started a few years ago when we looked at High Street and 2nd Avenue. So I hope to see a few more of these done every year. So I'm totally in favor of it.
Thank you. I got myself next and then Councillors Mackay and Stevens. So the comment I was going to make is the most requested signalized crosswalk that in my time as mayor, actually the only one, has been this crosswalk. So I think that's an important remedy because it is somewhat constricted in the view, and there's been conversations with many residents in the past concerned about it. And I just want to say that Councillor Johnson, you did bring up the First Avenue and High Street and also the other High Street. And I feel like I remember a guy coming to our council when he wasn't on council, advocating for those signals downtown. So maybe that'll happen, or maybe you've changed your mind since then. But I'll go to Councillor Mackay, then Councillor Stevens, and then I'm sure back to Councillor Johnson before I call the question.
Thank you. I just very much in favor of this one. From the CPAC conversation, one of their big points was the need to create a better, safer crossing here. And because it's not feasible to really move the crossing into a more convenient location for the new building, the idea is to create a safe point where people can use the crossing, which is not currently very safe, being a person who goes by there on a very regular basis. And so I really feel strongly that this is one that needs to happen. And I know that our community group who have had a good look at this, who are very in favor of it, this was one of the big things for them.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got Councillor Stevens and then Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. So there, you'll get no argument from me. That is a brutal crosswalk at Bayview and Dogwood. There does seem to be some question of, well, there's question in my mind of whether people will backtrack to go up the street and then back downtown, where I think the majority of them will be headed to and from. But there also seems to be some question in the maybe in the minds of the traffic engineers of how exactly to pull this off. So that's why I want to kick it back. But there's no question in my mind that a signalized crosswalk is better than a non-signalized one, and that anything would be an improvement at Bayview and Dogwood.
Thank you. And back to Councillor Johnson to close.
Thank you. I have always been an advocate of crosswalks in the downtown core. The Robertson First Avenue, sorry, the High Street First Avenue is extremely dangerous, and that's where I want to see it. The volume up at Bayview and Dogwood, that was the island highway. The volume of traffic we get now is nothing compared to before. I have no recollection of everybody being hit or injured at Dogwood and Bayview. If we're going to be concerned about the flow on Dogwood because of the expansion on the south end, then we have to look at putting cross lights in other pedestrian areas, such as down where 4th Avenue joins Dogwood, etc. Even at Stevenson and Bayview, or sorry, and Dogwood. Definitely North Davis Road and Dogwood. So the question is, if we're going to do crosswalks, let's do it on our own because it's our responsibility. This one here, I think we're just passing the buck onto the developer. And it's not necessary. I know of nobody ever being hurt or injured in any way, shape, or form. And I lived on Bayview since 1944 until I left there in '69.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any further discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Johnson opposed. The motion carries. So that's it on that item. We'll move on to item 10. It's reports, item 10.1, and this is a request for support from Ladysmith Family and Friends Association for a grant application to construct a picnic shelter at the Aggie Hall Playground. So this is the new nature play space up top. The recommendation is that council permit the Ladysmith Family and Friends Society to proceed with a grant application for funding to construct a picnic shelter at the Aggie Hall Playground, subject to attaining the appropriate permits and approval from the town of Ladysmith. And number 2, provide a letter of support to Ladysmith Family and Friends Society for the grant application to construct a picnic shelter located at the Aggie Hall Playground through the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative. Moved by Councillor Jacobson, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Any discussion? Awesome project. Councillor Virtanen, you're up.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is an awesome project. Just one question, because it keeps comparing it to the Transfer Beach picnic one. I'm down there a lot with a 5-year-old girl, and you can never get that table because it's so popular. I'm just wondering if I know it'd come down to fundraising, but are they going to copy it totally, or would there maybe be space for at least 2 tables or something?
I'll put that through to Mr. Barfoot.
Through the chair, or through the mayor, Councillor Virtanen, the design of the structure itself will be similar. No decisions at this time have been determined as to what amenities would be put underneath, whether it be park benches or a table. But it's the structure itself that is going to be the similar design to the one that's at Transfer Beach.
Thank you. Good feedback. Did I miss anyone else on the speakers list? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Moving on to bylaws. Speaking of housekeeping amendments, this is to the Town of Ladysmith Fees and Charges Bylaw 2008, number 1644. Recommendation is that council give first 3 readings to Town of Ladysmith Fees and Charges Bylaw 2008, number 1644, Amendment Bylaw number 9, 2021, number 2059, to amend Schedule 1 and remove Schedule 4 as outlined in the staff report dated March 2nd, 2021. Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Any discussion? Councillor Johnson. Muted, Councillor Johnson.
In the executive summary, we go on, we talk about the cost. I still think that the cost of the bench is ridiculously high. I would like to see something cheaper, but I will go with majority council. But it also says as meeting of January the 15th, 2007, council authorized $1 a bag for recycling bags. The cost to manufacture these bags has increased. What are we talking about? These bags, are the town selling these bags to the Parks and Rec Department?
Yep. I'll put it through to staff, whoever wants to answer that one, but yes.
I can answer that one. These are the yellow bags that you see when we put out our recycling, the ones that fly away an awful lot during the windstorms, and we sell them at City Hall and at FGCC for, well, hopefully $1.25 to recoup the cost now.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
Follow-up. So right now, as a homeowner, if I lose my bag, I have to go to City Hall and I will now pay you $1.25 per bag for those yellow ones.
That's if council approves the recommendation, that would be what it was, from $1 to $1.25.
How many, the question is, how many do we as a community sell? Ballpark.
I don't have that off the top of my head. Not everybody uses yellow bags. You can often use your own, purchase your own blue bin and utilize that. So I don't have how many we sell off the top of my head.
Because if it's only $1, I mean 100, or if it's 50 even, I know it's necessary. But if it's 1,000, I agree.
Okay, thank you. Just one point is, like, if it's 25 cents that you're deficit on that, you're putting it on taxation, and policy is always better done in small increments, not big jumps. So I would support the recommendation from staff that this be amended. But any other discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Moving on to correspondence. This is a request from Victoria and Vancouver Island Greek Community Society to illuminate City Hall to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Greek independence. Council previously authorized the flying of the Greek flag on March 25th. However, the Society's additional request to illuminate City Hall was not considered, as the town did not have lighting in place at that time. And the recommendation is that Council approve the request of the Victoria and Vancouver Island Greek Community Society to illuminate City Hall with blue and white lights on March 25th to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Greek independence. Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Item 12.2, request from BC Lyme Society to illuminate City Hall to increase Lyme disease awareness, and the council approved the request from BC Lyme Society to illuminate City Hall with green lights on May 3rd, 2021 as part of Lyme Disease Awareness Day. Moved by Councillor Virtanen, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We will soon be known as the City Hall of Lights and we'll be Christmas changing all year round, but that's awesome. We have no new business, I don't believe, so that will take us to question period. I'm just going to take a 2-minute recess real quick while do we have people to bring in for question period, Ms. Smith?
I don't see any questions, Your Worship.
Okay.
And there are no questions on our info line.
Okay, so if we have no questions this evening, we'll ask for, I think that takes us to a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Jacobson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. And for those who have interest in the Dalby's property, it will be coming to a public hearing near you soon, in your computer room, probably. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.